What's that?
Make sure we need it.
Sure.
Sorry.
Okay. We don't have an agenda or something.
I do.
Oh, you do?
Yeah. We'll call the meeting to order. This is the, what is this, the Wednesday, October 13th meeting of the Finance Committee. And this time we'll now pledge the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, we have Mayor Rose, Councilman Epperson, sorry about that. My meeting is right here.
Yeah, I should have anticipated. At least you didn't get the whole
I
document.
would not. And we have our Finance Committee with us here, Stacy Rhodes and Councilman Epperson, Finance Director and City Manager, Mr. Public. Let's see, public comment. This is time for petition press, any commenting on the committee. Any public comment? Yes. Regular agenda, review the capital improvement budgets.
Okay, so we called this meeting today because we hadn't spoken yet about the capital improvement program. So we have two pieces to it. The first piece is the current fiscal year, and we must have the council take an action to appropriate funding for the capital project for this year. Technically, the council has not done that. When you, thank you, in June, when the council gave us spending authority to continue without an actually adopted budget, the council did not give us authority to do capital projects. So that's why we're here today. We have a list of projects that we are able to fund with the cash that we have available in those capital improvement program funds, budgets. And we thought it would be a good idea to start with the Finance Committee, and so that if you had any questions about the priorities in terms of what can be done this year based on the money that we have available. So on the first table, which looks like it's page 23, first project schedule. I thought what we could do is just go over each project and explain why we feel it's a high priority to be done this year. So the first one on page 23 is a sewer repair of high priority projects. So this is something that we do every year, and we take that from the capital fund to do remove and replace sewer lines that are just done. Their useful life is over and they need to be completely replaced, or they need to be repaired. And only major repairs would fall under the capital improvement program. Very minor repairs could be done through operating monies. So this list is always a list of very significant repairs, and mostly they are replacement of sewer lines completely. So that is $192,000, and that's what we program every year. So that's sort of an ongoing capital program, which is a little bit unique. But in order to update and upgrade the sewer system, we should be doing this every year. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, if we don't, we'll have sewer lines that burst. And then that becomes an emergency, which becomes way more expensive. So it's also cost maintenance prevention. Now the next blank page 32, we need to come back to the council with a 5-year capital improvement program. We have not completed that, but we will, and we'll come back to you before this fiscal year ends. And I think a nice time to do that would be if we do a strategic planning session in January or February, somewhere in that time frame. Then we, as part of our strategic planning and goal setting, we would want to include the capital projects for the next year to see what priorities the council has. And compare that to what we have monies available and what staff is thinking in terms of operational priorities.
I think there is a CIP list somewhere, I'm pretty sure that, Winger, I think has.
We have it.
I think that's probably what you're operating off of, I assume.
The project sheets are from
Okay.
Yeah, we have a list. It's not particularly realistic in terms of how much money we have.
Yeah.
So we want to kind of sort through that in January, February to see how to prioritize.
And a few years back, I know they went through and assessed the whole system,
Mhm.
roads and sewer systems.
I had the map up here for a while.
Yeah.
Weiner did it probably, what, 8, 10 years ago?
Probably about 8 years ago, that's what I was thinking of. It was a little bit more than 5, it was like
Okay.
7 years ago.
Okay.
And they had them all categorized, but
Yeah.
some of them been fixed, but.
Yeah. That was just kind of an update situation.
All right, so 27. On page 27, we have a capital project that comes from the gas tax fund.
This one?
Yeah, that 27 on the table.
That's page.
That's, yeah, like that.
These are the-
Coming from different times.
That's what- yeah.
budget stuff. So this is Shakely Lane, and we're recommending a slurry seal with dig outs. So you dig out the streets first in order to stabilize the whole street before you do the slurry seal. So you've got to go in, do dig outs where the road is not secure enough for the slurry seal to take. Do all those dig outs first, and then come back and do your slurry seal.
There's some places there too, where it's got some swells in it too, where it's.
Yes, those would be dig outs.
I think you talked about that, I remember it was Larry, somebody talked about,
Clay.
yeah. it's the-
So we'll dig all that out, and then recompact it.
Mhm.
And that would be from Preston to Sutter on Shakely Lane.
Okay.
And we're estimating that at 200, of course, the prices are going up about every minute, but at the moment, it's
I thought we
228,000.
agreed to do West Marlette and not Shakely.
And
Yeah,
it's up to
yeah, we were, well, there's, yeah, I mean, it's kind of a, initially we had tabled Shakely trying to get West Marlette done, the sewer thing, trying to get those two things done.
So let me talk about West
Right, that's-
Marlette.
Right, that's what.
Yeah, because we haven't forgotten it, but
Yeah.
we've got to do the sewer piece first
Right.
before we can do the street anyway.
Yeah.
So we'll do the sewers piece first in the next year or two. The funding of that is going to be very difficult.
You can use SD1s for sewer lines.
You can for the street
For the
improvement
street
piece of it,
improvement, correct.
which is exactly what we're planning to do. The problem is that the sewer piece alone is costing over $1 million. Actually, closer to 2. So we're gonna have to do that first and then come back when the whole sewer piece is completed and then overlay the street. We have to overlay it after you rip it up to do the sewer. Yeah, you have to, anyway.
It's amazing me out here, they're cutting tunnels out here when they just paid.
So step one is CCTV, which we still have to do. We've got to go and see exactly what we have, what's there, what's not, what's broken, what line, what. If the whole line needs to be replaced, we need to know that now. So we'll do the CCTV. Then we'll get a cost estimate based on the video of that to figure out how much do we have to completely remove and replace. And it'll be a lot of it probably.
There's got a trunk line down there too, I think it's a main
Yes,
line that runs.
there
through
is
That's
a
not
main
problem.
line, yeah.
Because it comes across from Castle Oaks, a couple places, an old part of town, everything kind of runs right through there.
Those are all cambered, what, 3 years ago, aren't they? I thought they did a study like 2 or 3 years
It
ago.
might have, I don't know if it might have been the same one before, I'm not sure.
It was longer than that, and unfortunately, we have to do it again to be sure about what the updated
No, Sutter Street
conditions
does
are.
it every year because theirs are so bad.
Yeah,
They have their own camera, they do it every year.
Yeah, maybe,
Yeah,
okay.
so we'll do the camera work, then we'll do a cost estimate for you on what it would cost to do this, the infrastructure sewer piece, and then figure out how to fund that, and then when that is completed, then we have to come back and overlay the street. And so we can't do all of this without raising the sewer rates. There's just no way. There isn't enough capital money.
Well, we're due to, it's been 12, 14 years or more. It's
Yeah,
been a while.
so we'll get to that too.
Yeah.
And we'll come back to you as part of the strategic planning session. By that time, we should have an estimate of, the sewer rate study should be done by then, by February, so that we can get your, well, it should be done either by February or March, right around the time we do the strategic planning, so that you can take a look at how we compare with other agencies and how much do we actually need.
And rates are
All of
lower than
that's in the
everybody
study.
else,
Very, very low.
but, yeah, which is a good thing, I think.
Yeah.
Run efficiently here, that's all I can say.
But we're also underfunding the capital side of the, particularly the tertiary plant, because we just don't collect enough. That's $41 a month. Yeah. So we'll get to all of that too. So that's the other, that's the gas tax funded project. Mostly gas tax, SB1, and then the, what we call the HUDA money, the Highway something Transportation Act, I forget, uniform, Highway Uniform Transportation.
We're already expecting
Act.
that SB1 money to go up, and the problem, I mean, Culver, it's systemic, because with them really pushing electric vehicles, they're collecting zero money on that. Everybody knows that, I mean, they should, I mean, I'm not bragging about the state government per se, but I am, I mean, they should have seen this coming. I mean, they're gonna run us all, they're gonna run us all underground. I mean, is the more electric vehicles you have, they're not, you know, there's no gas tax anyplace else. They're trying to run by a mile, but I mean, good luck invading people's privacy like that. It's just, there's a bunch of these little things that are going on, so, I mean, it's just,
Well,
it's gonna get worse is my point, I guess. That's what I'm worried about.
It will. The only thing that they did change was they charge, I think it's $100 a year to register an electric vehicle, on top of the normal registration to pay for what you don't pay for gas tax. Now, that, I'm sure I pay more than $100 a year in gas tax.
Yeah, well, yeah.
So it doesn't really cover the true costs of an electric vehicle probably, but at least it's something. And so that revenue is getting collected.
I had some stuff a while back, some analytics stuff, but it was basically showing kind of where the lines kind of run together. And, I mean, the revenues, you know, it's just not enough or whatever.
Those charge $10 a gallon, Phil, covered.
They will.
Well, that would be one option. The other option is to charge electric vehicles even more
Yeah.
of a registration fee to cover transportation costs, right?
Yeah.
Which they should. I mean, they're impacting the roadway just like a gas engine is, but they're not getting taxed for that, except for the $100 a year.
Well, I'm not gonna, I would pick up and I pay the gross vehicle weight. I mean, that's what you get an extra little bump on there because of the weight of the vehicle.
That's right.
Do the same thing, but it's, yeah, just, anyway, I want to sideline, but it's.
Yeah, something has to happen though, you're right.
just-
And it is
we're seeing the
affecting
impacts of it, that's one thing.
Absolutely. It's affecting our bottom line budget. So the next special project on page 35 is in the wastewater treatment plant fund. And this is to improve and upsize the lift station with screening. So this is, you know, this project, we want to do it, but we don't have 100% of the funding to do the entire Headworks project, because it's now estimated at almost $3 million to do it. So we can do the design engineering, which you saw,
Yeah.
I think, at the last council meeting, and that's pretty expensive, right?
Who gave you those quotes? What, just
An engineer,
Copeland?
our engineer.
Why don't you get another one? The two fanciest Headworks in California are the two casinos, and they cost about $900,000.
For the
Bigger than our
design?
system. No, to build them and install. You should go up there and take a look. At least get a second opinion.
Okay, their costs are different. They don't have to pay prevailing wage, and they don't have to have all these other requirements.
Yeah, I think they did.
I don't know, maybe-
I doubt it.
have no idea. I don't know, it seems like a little weird stuff, but, yeah, we'll see what I guess.
But
I think they should get a second opinion.
we can certainly double check the estimate, that's fine,
Yeah.
absolutely. Don't want to pay more than we want to or have
Do you know
to.
who designed their Headworks up there and all that, or who?
I guess I could find out.
That's probably the idea to do that, maybe figure that out and go from there, just kind of goes around a little bit.
Aqua something did ranch, there it is, can't remember.
Is that something we're gonna have to bid out anyway, the actual design
Oh,
of
yeah.
the works? That's what
Yeah.
I figured, yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, well, I mean, overestimating in this situation probably is better than underestimating
yeah, we always do it that way.
the cost of actually going up there.
Let's see, 30, then the next, so we will
We're done.
get a hard estimate on that. We'll do the design work we can do this year, but doing the construction part, we don't have the money. And so we've got to figure that out.
I know last time when we did all the other upgrade stuff, we got a loan from USDA for like 1.8%, which isn't horrible, and it's actually really good for the lawnmower.
So what we're hoping,
You can talk to regional too, and they'll help you with grants.
there's a grant coming out in February that we would specifically ask for the Headworks project.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the grants would be we could, I know some people have gotten them, I've seen where people have awarded grants, other jurisdictions. That would be,
Okay.
guys, I mean.
Yeah. So the next one on page 47, and just sort of skipping around, but it's part of these special tables, is also the wastewater treatment plant, and it's a construction of additional storage for treated wastewater, Pond 8, and expansion of land disposal irrigation fields. And in this upcoming year would be $325,000 to do the design, what's called the engineering, architectural and engineering design, environmental review. And then construction would be in the following year of $8 million.
In Pond 8, that location would be in
Yeah.
the city field, or is that what we're talking about still? Or?
Yeah.
Are we gonna fix all our sewer leaks before we expand our plant? 'Cause I don't know if you know this, but when I was down there working, you run about 275 gallons a minute normally. When it rained, it'd go over 1,000 gallons a minute.
Yeah, that's the Ione issue if you're on the old part of town. That's where most of it comes from, we believe, and I know Kenny smoke tests that Chief Kenny did years back, and we know there's a lot of Ione up there. We fixed a small pittance of it, but it's just, the whole system, I think a lot of the gutters and rain, I think it actually all goes into the system, which it's one of those things in a dry year, if we had storage, it wouldn't be that big a deal necessarily, because the turbidity goes way down because you're diluting it, like the problem we had at the prison, you know, when they're restricting water, the
Turbidity goes up.
way up, yeah, that's a problem.
Right.
It's
The
like-
regional even told me that they would help finance the INIs, they did that with Sutter Creek. Sutter Creek was horrible.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
they got
right.
a grant to fix it all that way because of, building a sewer plant 10 times the size of what you really need. You're treating rainwater.
Because a couple of things, I kind of know, I mean, it's kind of this weird thing, where before, we had this huge problem of taking in too much water between the AWA plant over there, backwash, and that was a third of our capacity at one point. And then they went and did all their upgrades, and now it's just a small amount. But then with ARSA being out, and this other, in the prison restricting, it's kind of created, it's actually kind of gone from one problem to the other. It has.
It has.
It's one of those things, I mean, it's one of these things you can't completely predict, it's just changes, and that's just part of the deal, I guess. But I know the INI issue, you'll notice right away, as soon as it starts raining, I mean,
That water flows.
it'll just go, whoop, yeah, it goes way up. Some of we had other problems too, we fixed some of the stuff that was kind of low-hanging fruit, so to speak. There's more up there to be done.
The one on my street before it was fixed, you could literally stick your ear to the ground and hear the rainwater running through the sewer lines.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I believe it, I know that, I mean, that whole area is kind of, I'm not sure what I would talk to Kenny about that issue up there, he knows more about that
Okay.
than we do. At least that's where we thought most, we had some other animals too, Claude. Have you got more of those that do yet still, or is that?
Down, that map somewhere
Right,
shows
that's right.
every study of storm drains and sewer lines and the stages of how good or horrible they are.
Okay.
Some of them weren't even fixed, they weren't done right first time, I guess.
And then on the last page, on the very back, page 48, is the final project that we're recommending, which is also at the, through the wastewater treatment funds, the tertiary fund, is to install a roof shade structure over the existing, not so much the chlorine contact chamber, but in talking to Todd, he just needs some shade over everything that's out there,
Yeah.
getting beaten down.
Yeah, really.
So we estimate that at about $55,000.
Is this where the flock tank is and the
Yeah.
floating storage tanks are?
Yeah.
Some-
So that's all we can fund based on the different restricted funds for capital projects.
We're starting to realize the savings from, because I mean, one of the big things, that solar field out there, we're trying to figure out if we can realize some savings from that. Is that, we're starting to see that mature a little bit yet, or is that?
We will next year.
Okay.
We were just starting to, just now, right, Chris, I think we're just now seeing where it's turning over to.
We cut the forest out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I know. The forest and the dust, it's just, I mean,
Yeah.
that dust is gonna be a problem that way, yeah.
So yes, we should. we should see a major savings
I
there.
think 2 months it put out its actual wattage.
Okay,
This year.
that's good. Okay.
So we're paying $10,000 a month for nothing for about 10 months.
Yeah, this is great, right? Yeah.
So that's the CIP piece. Any questions? I mean, it's not, you don't have a lot of wiggle room.
Yeah.
And it's just this year. Next year, we'll have the 5-year running CIP program. We have to do that because a lot of the money that we need to save 5 years ahead of time.
Right.
And so we've got to have that 5-year plan to figure out, well, how much should we be setting aside every year to
Okay. ultimately
get this project done. And then at the same time, looking at whether the rate structure is going to meet those needs.
Okay.
On page 27 is the ARPA projects, and the ARPA ad hoc committee, which Dan is on, has met quite a few times. And we've honed the list down. We keep changing it, but I think we finally have a pretty good list of what's doable. They're all one-time projects as required by the ARPA rules. You cannot use ARPA money for salaries, benefits, pension liabilities. All the things that cities would love to use ARPA money for is not allowed. So, but what we can do is some very much needed projects. The fencing is the first one, and the fencing project started out at $70,000 a few months ago, and now it's going to cost $100,000 just based on cost increases that we're seeing everywhere.
Where's that?
Materials.
We need to fence the wastewater treatment plant. It is it's not a homeland security facility the way it's set up right now, and it should be. Anybody can come and go as they please. The deer are completely destroying the crops. The alfalfa crop
They're
should
floating
be.
in the ponds all the time, too.
Well, and
Dead ones.
they're eating about
Oh,
half
yeah.
of the crop every year.
Oh my gosh.
Uh,
I believe
so-
there's a herd out there.
So fencing will actually keep them out. But fencing will also keep out people who do not need to be there. It is a homeland security type facility where there is risk that people can contaminate it. So we have to have security. And people can come and go only with the appropriate staff person with them. They can't just come and go on their own.
There's security cameras, all that stuff still from in there? or-
Yes, they will be as part of this project.
I know that we were having problems, so we kept on plugging them and.
Yeah, they cut the wires on those since Perk got out there. I wonder why.
Yeah, well, it's a variety of reasons why, I'm gonna guess, based on, yeah.
The second item we've talked about in closed session a few times. We're still negotiating with property owners to purchase the property right next door, which actually we share a wall with. And then also to purchase a what could be a municipal parking lot. And as soon as she comes back from her vacation, I will sit down and negotiate with her as well. So that's ongoing. We've done extensive analysis of the structural integrity of the building next door. We've done a fire inspection and a building inspection. And we're very confident that we can afford the tenant improvements that we would need to make it a municipal government functioning building. The downstairs needs very, very little work. That would be almost move-in ready right now. Upstairs needs significant work, so so we're working on that. We would like to replace the flooring in parts of City Hall. We'd like to paint the outside of City Hall. And the flooring would be mostly carpeting, but we'll keep what is already wood flooring would stay wood flooring for the most part. The only office that does not need to be fixed is mine because that flooring is new. The rest of the flooring in the building is getting to the point where we're tripping over the carpeting. So that's just becoming a safety problem, and a huge aesthetic problem just in terms of the stains and everything. So we'd like to do that. This is the golden opportunity to do a project we otherwise would never get to do, or very difficult to do, so we have the ARPA money. The West Marlette Street Sewer Project. So we are asking for $400,000 through ARPA to do the remove and replace. And so the CCTV and then the actual sewer repairs that are needed will all be funded under ARPA, unless you know, unless we can find grant monies, but I think that would be very difficult. We want to focus the grant monies on the Headworks project and the INIs. So we are asking for 400,000 so we can get that started. We desperately needed to replace the street sweeper. It was costing us more money to fix than it would be to buy a new one over time. So asking for 140,000 of ARPA money for that. The full cost of the street sweeper is closer to 300,000. So this is just partial funding for it. Small dog area at the park and drinking fountain. So just some amenities to Howard Park.
They already have that. Is it?
They have a large dog
big
park
park.
area, but the small dogs get eaten by the large dogs.
I thought they
so
were
we
just
need
gonna put a fence
separate.
down and separate.
No, there's the separate one would be out front there. The monument sign used to be, that was the area.
They're only talking about just sticking a fence.
And that's already
Cut
designed
off.
too. I think
Okay.
IBCA may actually have that somewhere. I'll ask. I'll talk to Rick over at the plant there, rock plant.
Rip Press?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I'm on IBCA for years, but that was one of the things project we've been working on. So we had some leadership in there too.
Yeah, it won't be dog fights anymore.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Well, the first part was to kill the weeds, and then now I got squirrels in there. So
And it is fairly typical now, after years of experience, cities have realized that small dogs and big dogs shouldn't be in the same place. So most cities have separate.
it's pretty well used. If you go by there about, I'd say about 2/3 of the time I go by, there's dogs out there running around.
Yeah.
Part of it was that we're trying to keep the initial thing was to keep the dogs off of the play fields because people were out there, kids out playing soccer, and finding little surprises and,
That still
Little
happens.
gifts.
oh boy.
It still happens.
I know, we yell it all the time for running out, letting dogs out.
Yeah.
That's the whole point.
And again, that's only 15,000 of ARPA money. Now, the big one here, the important one, connection of the wastewater treatment plant to the tertiary plant, $150,000. We think that's enough to do it, but it's complicated. We need permission from the regional water board. We also need permission to use someone else's piping if that's the best plan, which we have to still figure out what's the best plan, you know, what's the most achievable way to do this. The prison has a pipe and ARSA has a pipe, and so we just need to figure out the best place to connect.
So when ARSA goes out, then will that change that?
Yeah, that pipe's ours anyhow, it's already there. And
Well-
that was used, don't know if you know, before, the tertiary, our plant was connected to the tertiary via a pump one. It's the first, it's pond 4 volt, as soon as you go in the gate, all you need to do is put a submersible pump right there. And that does all that.
Was that an emergency thing, or what was that deal? I don't remember what that was.
I can't remember, do you remember why, Dan? When, it was actually Tom Sweat and.
Yeah, it pumped over there.
Why did they do that though?
When ours flooded, when it started to flood, I think it was, they did,
2017.
because they pumped
So
it, they also pumped it there, and they pumped it over to where you put the solar panel. They used that as a floodplain in 97.
Was that-
They
oh,
filled
okay.
that with water,
Okay.
catch basin, that's why I bitched about that.
Interesting, huh?
Yeah, they used that as a catch basin because they could hold it, it was overflowing. Ponds 5 and 6 were
I
overflowing.
believe it, yeah.
That's what that first vault,
Hmm.
all they did is put a pump in there, and it's already hooked to the tertiary plant. It's literally one trash pump does this.
If it's the size, the size and capacity, all that kind of stuff's probably gonna be bigger issues, huh?
It's a small pump, it's, the one in the headworks is nothing, it's like a 15 horse or something, but
Hmm.
anyhow, I'm glad that's in there.
Yeah, we need to do it, and it's a high priority for the council, that I'm very aware of. And so that's, and we met with the regional board last week, we brought that up. They were very happy we brought it up, so that it doesn't come later as, oh.
They hate surprises, I find. They really
Yeah,
don't.
they do.
Every surprise, doesn't matter if you're full or not, they really don't. As soon as you know about it, you message them, they're happy, that's what it seems like.
But they were very supportive of the concept of it because it gives us way more flexibility in how we balance everything out.
I've been
So-
talking to them for 2 years about it. He said,
Yeah.
just need to apply for it.
Yeah.
Scott Crandall, I've got tons of permits from him, he says, just give me a call.
That's good. At least you're aware of it, seemingly on board, so that's good.
The next item, information technology phone upgrades. So we have a phone system that frankly is very frustrating. It doesn't work very well. It's not voice over IP. You can't transfer your phone to another phone. You can't pick up messages unless you're sitting at your desk. There's just a lot of things about it that are very limiting. So we'd like to upgrade the phone system, which requires that we buy new physical phones for the desks. And there's not that many, there's like 20. And then that we go to a voice over IP system where you could get your phone messages from your computer wherever you are, if you're logged into your Outlook system.
This
And-
does away with 8x8, basically, right?
Yes,
Which is that
it
horrible
does.
bill we pay every month.
And it's way too expensive is the other problem, and that's the main reason for the change. We also need, we've got computers that are 15 years old that have not been replaced. And that is way beyond the industry standard for a business environment, or even a government environment. So we just have to update some of the computers, some of the software, some of the hardware. All of it's way out of date, and that's not good. And we don't want a whole network shut down because of that. We would lose productivity for a day or two or longer, depending on. I've actually had that happen, so I know what that's like. And this is a golden opportunity to use some special funding to do that. Fire Station 1 does not have air conditioning inside the building where they have living quarters. And that is not okay. It gets incredibly hot, and basically you can't sleep there on those nights. So we need an air conditioning unit, and we need to upgrade. The roof needs to be replaced, and they would like to build a second story for more living quarters. So that total price tag, we believe, is around $100,000. We're double checking that because it seems like
Seems awful cheap.
it seems a little too cheap, so I need to talk to Ken a little bit more.
Let them build the headworks.
Yeah, they,
Wow.
they might be able to. Part of ARPA's rules allow for us to receive compensation for lost revenue during COVID. So the $100,000 that you see where it says revenues, we believe that's how much we lost during COVID in TOT, sales tax, property taxes, and all of the revenue streams. EB Hall, we lost a lot of money on EB Hall. So all of this together, we believe, is about $100,000.
I'm glad we raised the rent on EB Hall a couple years ago. We did actually before. It was like, we were like booked way too cheap, and now it's like, yeah, that's good.
And then the last item is Emergency Small Business Loan Program Supplemental. So a lot of businesses applied under the CDBG Emergency Loan Program, but they didn't qualify based on the rules of that program, which were very, very stringent. You had to be in business at least 2 years prior. You had to have a certain number of employees that were full-time. You couldn't have too many part-time employees, or you did. And there were just all these rules that shut a lot of people out who did lose a lot of money during COVID. So one of the recommendations from ARPA ad hoc committee was to try to fund additional requests, because we got about 30 applications.
Yeah.
We've got quite a few. But we only funded about half of them through the actual CDBG emergency loan program, and the other half we had to say, no, we can't fund that because it doesn't meet the rules. So this would be additional monies for those folks who did submit applications and who we believe need compensation for their losses.
Is the application period still open then?
It is technically still open.
Okay.
And we still have money even in the CDBG program.
Okay.
We've only allocated about $38,000
Yeah, something like that.
of folks who actually qualified and are getting money. There's still 20.
63,000 total, 3,000 of that is for operating. We spent, I think it's 32, so there's like 28 left.
28,000
Is
still
there a
left.
cap on that, how much you can,
5,000 for
That's
each
like-
business.
Okay.
And then we still have 28,000, so at least 5 more businesses could qualify.
There's at least one I'm gonna talk to him from down here.
Good.
Down there and talk to
Yeah.
That was all the complaint in my one, they said you had to have so many employees. A lot of these companies don't even have employees on Main Street.
Yeah.
They're just.
Yeah. Yeah, the rules
mom and
are
pop
very,
Families. And
How many employees do you have to have?
I don't know offhand, I'd have to look.
You just can't have too many part-time employees.
Right, that was the stipulation was part-time for whatever reason. It
Four,
was-
you can't have more than four, I think.
Right, I think
And I
four.
didn't, this was not designed for small cities at all.
Right, no.
Don Lee's-
It was designed for a really big city,
They're all part-time.
Right.
and then they could meet all the requirements.
Well, that's kind of one of those weird things, well, I mean, the secret they made a bunch of part-time employees because they couldn't afford full-time employees.
Right,
It's all
exactly.
Requirements, it's like you've done the same, you've done this to yourself, not, I mean, the
Right.
government has. This is your problem, not mine, but, yeah, that's the game, I guess.
Yeah, there's so many strings attached to grants these days, it's just, it does make it difficult. So that comes out to 1.1, is that right?
That's
No, plus the 820,
1.9.
1.9, right?
Yeah.
And we actually have 2,040,000. So so here's the other piece. We got $1 million in cash from the ARPA program a few months ago, but we're not getting the second payment until next year, probably in June or July, somewhere around then.
Somewhere in there.
So we can't spend the whole 2 million right now anyway, we don't have it yet. So whatever, what's the surplus? Like 100,000?
something, yeah.
So we can come back at a future date and see if we estimated correctly and see if we actually have money left over, and you can allocate it next year when we get the second check. So we've basically left 100,000 unallocated, which I think is good because these are all estimates anyway. Yeah. And that's the ARPA project, our program. And those are the two new things you'll see on Tuesday as a full council in terms of, as part of the budget process. The operating budget, which the council did talk about at the last council meeting, we made very few changes from the last council meeting, but Mary wants to talk about one of them that is significant. And it's our favorite page, which is page 9.
Yes, it is.
So go ahead.
So we've updated the table. You'll notice, you might notice, the amount is a little bit different. What we took a look at was $668,000 that it's actually money that was used for the fire station. So it's really between the allocation of impact fees to fire versus police,
Right, yeah.
which is internal and not likely qualifying as an interfund loan.
Right.
So the way that we would handle that is by looking, going forward, to change the allocation of how those funds they come in, so they'd be allocated then, if the council would agree, 75% to police and 25% to fire, so that fire still gets some funding, but so that it equals out that
Yeah.
money that was used previously for the fire station for fire, and then brings police up a little bit so that they kind of are on equal footing with funding. So we removed that as an interfund loan. We would just make that right by allocations going into the future, however long that takes to fix. The other thing we added was $250,000.
Okay, back up 1 second.
Oh, yes.
So with that, is there any consideration of Measure M? Because this whole thing, there's pre-Measure M, and then now Measure M, they actually get funded, but it was never really in the budget, as a part of this piece, as far as the borrowing part. Does that matter at all, or no?
So the money that they borrowed was not Measure M.
No, it was not, no,
impact
it
fees.
was, right, correct. I remember that, because I know the police are paid for the general fund and all this, where Measure M covers the fire.
Right.
I don't know if it even matters really, if it's germane or not, but I just,
We have that separated.
Okay.
So the funding for Measure M for fire is separated out from the
Okay.
funding for.
and are you talking to the chiefs about this at all? Are they okay with that, or is that?
I have.
Okay, I don't even talk about it now, but it's fine.
Well, there's never enough money. If you-
Actually didn't like that one.
Oh, I'm sure you did not.
If you talk to any fire chief or any police chief in this state, they will always tell you they never have enough money.
For real.
And I get it, but I've also got a public works department, I've also got, we have to balance the whole budget. And it's difficult, yes.
Yeah, okay, that's good. That's all I had. I just wanted to make sure that we.
But no, they're not happy about it. They would love to have more development impact fee money. But there will be plenty of diff money coming in over the next several years, which a lot of it will go to public safety.
And so what comes in on that total amount, the 100%, how much is that a year usually?
I don't have that in my
I'm just curious because I would wonder how many years that would take to pay off.
Yeah, I
Would
can
it be 10
incorporate
or
that.
5 or-
It,
Language.
we don't know because it depends on how many
Correct.
Right.
diff fees we collect,
Yeah,
which is simply dependent upon how many units they actually build
right.
and get occupied.
It's about 80 units a year, I guess, on average.
Well, but it's-
But that really matters.
It's just hard, I mean, what happened was, which you know this because of the wastewater issue, we thought at this point that they would have probably had an additional 200 units built, but they're not built yet. So they went at a slower pace than we predicted.
Okay.
And that's what we never can predict very
yeah.
precisely, is like, how many units are they gonna build? Most developers right now are not building more than 100 to 200 units a year.
Okay.
They used to build thousands of units a year until they got burned really badly in 2008.
So they're just keeping up with demand basically.
Right, they will not take that financial risk of building with the assumption that they're going to sell
I
those
think
homes. They're
Tom
not
said,
doing
I
that.
think Tom said publicly they're having deliverables to this month out at Wildflower anyway, so it's just,
Yeah.
okay, all right.
He's more predictable than anyone else.
Yeah.
Because he's kept to his word that he was gonna do a certain amount every year. The big question mark will be Ringer Ranch.
Right.
And whether that even gets off the ground.
Is the water a big issue there? Then?
It's still a big issue.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Which is why we need to update the wastewater permit.
Mhm.
We've got to assume that these projects might move forward. And if we don't update the wastewater permit, then the developers will simply not, they'll just like, no, this is a no-go.
Okay. Thank you.
So the other change that we made was then adding 250,000, you'll see that kind of in the middle of the tertiary. So this dates back to about 2000. Some ARSA funding was used in the general fund, which actually should go to tertiary, so we've included, because it wasn't listed here before.
So that money, was it from Arsenal then? What was that money at?
Yeah, that was, is this the one that Dominic,
Mhm.
this is the one about the horse arena?
Oh, that, okay.
That's what this is
All right,
about.
Okay.
Have you guys even read the contract?
Now, this is not a public comment period. We can have public comment at the end if you would like, it's up to the chair. But that's what this is, and we have read the loan agreement very carefully, and it should be paid back.
That's what it looks like to me, and it sort of kind of says it actually.
Yeah.
So the percent of interest that was mentioned on there, is that on
Yeah,
there?
so I actually need to update this, because this is just taking the rest of
Right,
the
yeah.
really low rates, but that's actually listed at 6%.
That was higher,
yeah.
Yeah,
That
6%
was
off.
And I'm not sure if that negotiable, it's in the contract, and I'm not sure if it's like ironclad or is it,
Well, it's the interest rate at the time.
right?
Which was a long time ago.
Correct, yeah.
So-
And it was using the LAIF rate, and at the time, it was really high, so
Yeah, everything.
I don't know if legal argument can be made for that. I'm not sure. That would be legal counsel probably.
Yeah, okay.
We can ask legal that question. All it says in the law is you have to pay it back with interest. It doesn't specify what that interest rate is.
Is it compounding or is it just straight interest?
Yeah, I mean, it would be for any outstanding over time.
Oh my gosh. That's a lot of money.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow, wow.
Yeah, so,
And if there's any reason, I wouldn't know, I only maybe Janice might know, is there any reason why it wasn't repaid? It was just kind of a loan and just,
well, none of these were repaid.
I know, is there any reason, well, I mean, that one in particular, why? I mean, it was just, it was
I
obvious.
don't know. That's a
Okay.
good question.
I don't think anybody
Because we
knows.
have such a rotating
Oh, I know.
administration.
Oh, I like it.
I think that's part of the, I do think that's part of the reason.
I'm sure it is.
It's just a
Right.
lack of institutional memory about what should be done.
That was a grand jury, that's what they told us, basically, they said, you
Yeah.
changed bankers too much, I'm like, well, then,
Yeah.
you're gonna have to find some more money to pay some of it better, because we don't have that kind of money here. And
Right.
Find somebody's fault.
Yeah.
Okay.
The other thing we need to mention, I think it's important to know, and I think you had it in the resolution, is that if the city should get into financial stress
Mhm.
because of the recession that might come,
Mhm.
or some people would say will come, then my recommendation is that you don't stop paying these funds back altogether, you simply
So
reduce
fall
the
back.
amount, and that's really important. Keep paying it so that you meet the legal obligations of paying back those funds.
Because that was one thing that stopped it, was that CalPERS hit, we got 107,000.
Right.
And that was it right there.
Right. So, but you can negotiate with CalPERS, and you can say, look, we've got to do this in addition to paying you,
Mhm.
so, and you work out how much you can afford for each one of those. But to not pay someone at all either CalPERS or this, I think is a really bad
Yeah,
idea.
you gotta show some sort of effort.
Right, you have to show good faith effort, right?
Yeah.
And so that's what I'm recommending in the resolution.
Okay. I got a question here, so, I know this is previous meetings, but like, so the general fund, so there's some due to, due froms, is there any way we can switch those, or is that possible to block?
To see if we can eliminate any, I'll look at that and see if there's a list of any that we can kind of net
Consolidate.
together.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll take a look at
Because
that.
that would be great to get, I mean, if we could get, because there's two really big ones, and there's like, what, 500 in that one, and 6 or 7 in that one, if there's a way that we could just wipe them off, or partially, or something like that, I think I'd be happy with that, you see what I'm talking about? Like, due to, due from there, those two things, there, switch those around, I mean, if there's a way to kind of, to knock that down a little bit, that would be amazing.
Just pay them off in full.
Or pay them off whatever the balance of those two are, if it makes sense. I mean,
Yeah, if
that's
they're
the-
going between the right funds, if we can cancel them out.
That would be great, yeah.
I
Oh,
can
yeah,
put a
that would
list
work.
together
Yeah.
and see if that will work.
Okay, yeah.
And then, or any of these funds that really need to be paid off, like the gas tax fund, I mean, it's only 43,000, is there any reason to pay that off faster? I'm not thinking like we have road projects and stuff, we need the extra money.
They would love to get that money in the
Yeah.
gas tax fund, absolutely.
Because I mean, if we want to pay, I mean, I would say, one of the things we could do is if we have some of these smaller funds, we could figure out a way to pay them off a little faster, pay them off in whole,
Or in whole, yeah.
and then slow down the other ones. But I mean, if that makes fiscal sense, then I would say that would be my preference if that's anything. Like the impact fees, I don't think it really matters because that's just gonna be a time situation, and like I say, it might not, you know.
Yeah.
And then the ARSA, obviously, same thing there. But- So then the ARSA fund, it was advanced, oh, I know why the general fund, because there was no income at that time, basically. Okay, I get it.
I mean, I do think that the gas tax fund could easily be paid back in full. They desperately need the money,
Mhm.
and it's only 43,000. And if you recall, we actually had an annual rate on the old
120.
was 125. It's down to 113.
Hmm.
So there's a little bit of money,
Yeah.
one-time money
Yeah.
that you could
Okay.
use for that. And that would be probably the highest priority one. I would recommend that I think you have a great idea there, that it be paid back in full, because the gas tax fund keeps going down every year, not going up. And I think that was
All the changes.
all the changes. We cleaned up some, just to get the numbers exactly right in terms of salary and benefits. That's been cleaned up. You'll see that in the final draft on Tuesday. Overall, we're in a good place right now, but we also have debts that need to be paid back, and we can do it right now, so let's do it. And I think that's great news for the city. Moving forward, there needs to be fiscal discipline, and that's what has been lacking in the past, and that's understandable for lots of reasons. But the next thing we need to do before you adopt the next budget is to come back with you with a much more detailed explanation of those development impact fees and how they could be programmed for actual projects as we move forward. Because we're collecting a lot of development impact revenue, but we haven't really spent that money, and we can. I mean, legally, we can spend that money, but only, park development impact fees on parks and public safety on, they're very specific, little different budgets. But we need to have a more detailed understanding of that for you, so that we can then put it into next year's budget to actually do some projects.
Sounds good. Anything else? You good?
Jim, because there is something fishy that I remember about the tertiary plant to the arena, because Mr. Hahn did pay $250,000 cash to build the thing, which is a weird number that exactly matches this number. And then
Who was that paid to?
he just paid for it. Mr. Hahn built the arena.
Mm-hmm.
It's weird that that same number is borrowed against, so, can we open up the public yet?
Oh, you
Public
can.
comment, all right. So,
First off, I apologize for breaking in.
It's okay, I'll always let you know.
The loan that they talk about comes up every 2 years. It was a loan to build the cover over the arena. And specifically in the contract, it said that the revenues from the arena would be used to pay for the
reimbursement.
cover.
Got it.
Going back through the 2008 audited budgets, and that's as far back as I could go, every year between 2008 and 2012, the arena averaged about $30,000 a year in revenues. The revenues were collected. They were just never applied to the loan. Year after year, when, I forgot the name of the young man that ran it,
Yeah.
when he was paying his fees, none of those fees ever went toward the loan. They went into the general fund.
Doing the maintenance most of
The current operator, her funds go to the general fund. They don't go to service the loan. But just the first 6 years of $30,000.
Should have paid it back.
Should have paid it back adequately.
Can you
In
look
fact,
into that and see?
the loan goes back to the 90s. I could only go back to 2008, but if you go back and look at some of the old audit reports
Right,
and see what the revenues were,
yeah. We know, we have the revenues. We can tell you exactly what they were.
If he's correct, is there a way that would help fix this, or does that screw up the general fund big time?
Well, that would, I'll have to look at that.
well, it
that's
just
part of
means
it.
the money was collected.
Right.
It was just never correctly
Applied.
applied.
Well, it was.
So it's not fair to say to the current owner, we need to raise your rates because there's this
Right.
outstanding loan, or take money from other funds.
No, we're not, no, I get what you're saying, we're not doing that. What we can do is tell you exactly how much revenue we collected from the horse arena operations, from the previous operator and the current operator.
Yeah, well, so, you know,
And then compare that.
Pretty good there.
And I'm still looking for the amount of money that was spent subsidizing the tertiary plant over the years. The last fund balance report that we got, which unfortunately we've received no report since October of 18, showed $600,000 had been spent from the capital improvement fund to subsidize the tertiary plant, of which no water from Ione goes to. And that's a violation of California law, and we've checked that with the Jarvis tax people up in Washington. So I'd like to see that accounted for too, because that could go toward Marlette Street repairs.
Thanks, Jim. Anything else?
No,
Okay, thank
that's
you.
it.
Close up the comment. Yeah, something to look into. I know, like, with the arena, some of that I would assume was going to maintenance, because that was, money was collected, but it was not. Maintenance was always kind of a new thing there. It costs money to maintain it. The income that came in, I think, I'm not sure, most years it fairly covered, it did cover it because of expenses.
Well, the net revenue after you know, it was not 30,000.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
But we'll get the exact number for you.
Yeah, and the tertiary plant, we've known for years, I mean, we were saddled with it. I mean, that was the contract we agreed to, whoever did 25 years ago. We're gonna take the water and that's it.
Should have gave it to Sutter Creek.
Yeah, well, that's never the problem. Anyway, all right, anything else?
Nothing else for me.
All right.
Great thing, Chris. Awful quiet for such a smart dude.
No kidding. Yes, you would get it.
That's probably why he's smart.
Yeah, yes. All right, we'll call the meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
Again, my apologies.
No, you're fine. Thanks, I appreciate that. I really do. Doing good?